Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of a video on the Ableton Certified Trainer Nordic community channel. My name is Merlyn Silva. I'm the certified trainer from Denmark, currently based in Aarhus. And over to you.
Hi, my name is Joaquín. I'm a certified trainer from Mexico, and I'm currently in Gothenburg, Sweden.
Cool. So we're putting our heads together for you guys today, and we're introducing a series that we're going to have here on the channel that's going to roll over the rest of the summer and hopefully beyond. And this is called Ableton Doctor, and Joaquin's going to tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, and the reason is that same as with doctors, you can come to us or other cities who are going to be here and ask questions. So you can send your questions, and we will try to answer them this way. And it will stay recorded for you to see anytime. So that's the idea.
Wicked.
So,
So, yeah, let's get down to it. Today, we've got 4 questions that we've sourced from our user groups on Facebook. So, if you see this and you want to get involved, make sure you jump on and find the thread and leave us a comment or send us a message or something like that. And I'm going to start off with one I've got from Lena B from Gothenburg. So, hi, Lena, and thanks for the question. This is quite a juicy one, and maybe one that is more of a conversation before we jump into live. And Lena asked, how do I optimize my Mac for playing live with Ableton Live? Which is a great question and a really, really big question. So we thought that was a good one to start off with. So in my experience, the key here is simple, simple, simple. It's very easy to kind of overvote how your computer might behave when you play live. And I really encourage us all to be like as conservative as we can. There's a lot of things that might change by standing on a stage. It could be a case of the temperature of the room. Remember, lights from the stage are going to be shining on your computer. It could be that you're nervous, perhaps a little bit tipsy, perhaps just kind of feeling the vibes and not necessarily having your technician hat on and are thinking more of performance. So I think the best advice we can give as trainers is to be extremely, extremely conservative. So a list I prepared before I hand over to Joaquin on how we can do this. Wi-Fi off, Bluetooth off, power plugged in. Now that can sometimes I've experienced if the electricity in the room's a bit weird, you can get a ground loop. So in that case, power out, and hopefully you have a battery. But otherwise, power in. I often do a fresh restart of my computer and make sure absolutely everything is closed. So especially browsers, web clients like your email program, maps, and anything that might want to be dialing out or compiling some kind of list in the background. Basically aimed for just having Ableton Live open. So beyond that, a few things you can do are I will always recommend that we only ever use, where possible, native live devices in our sets. So you might want to be freezing and flattening huge contact library tracks. You might want to be rethinking if you really need Sound Toys or FabFilter or other great products that you could perhaps rebuild and get 90% of the way there with live. Max for Live is obviously so integrated now into Live that it's not an issue. But if you're running an older version of Live or Max or have an older computer, you might consider how much complexity is in your set. So if do you really need 23 LFO devices all pointed at different things? Can you do that with automation in a clip or automation on your timeline? And finally, I think it's important to turn things off if you don't need them. If you've got a huge drum rack that you use for one song and it's got 128 sounds in it, and maybe automate or find a way or make a mental note that you could turn that off when you're not using it because that RAM could be freed up and that gives your computer more resources. But yeah, it's a huge, huge subject. So what do you think, Joaquin? Is there any advice you have for Lena when she performs with her computer?
yes, and I have some tips that I learned the hard way. So, First of all, the number that you see on the top right of your screen is the percentage of CPU used for live, not for your computer. So it's important to understand what it means. The first tip would be to, when you're using, for example, almost any device that has a filter, if you add a sample to a drum rack, you will see that automatically creates a simpler with a filter in it. And it does that for every sample that you add. These filters, if you're not actually filtering your sounds, are still working. So maybe it's better if you turn them off, because you will end up having a lot of filters that do nothing, and you will see a difference, mostly if you have a lot of samples. That's a very easy one, and it helps a lot. Also for other synthesizers, sometimes I just turn off the filter because I want some harsh or bright sound, and that's the way I like it. Also, if you have many like layered sounds and each device has a filter, you may maybe send those via a bus or a group of channels to a single filter. That's easier than having, I mean, that's better than having many filters. So filters use a lot of processing power. And that also takes me to using returns, send and returns. Maybe you want to have delay on many channels, reverb. I have seen some students using effects directly on the channel. It's better if you use sends, because you can basically have one delay and one reverb and have a decent sound instead of using many of these effects. Also, you know what? I'm a big fan of making wall of sounds. That means layering a lot of sounds. So I was making this crazy set for creating this thick wall of sounds. So I said, yeah, maybe I will just put a lot of loops in the audio channels, and I played all of them. And I started to see that it was using a lot of processor. So I started to experiment and found that if you use these clips, these audio clips, inside simplers, I don't know why, but it saves a lot of CPU. It's super interesting, and I still have, I want to ask Ableton why this is happening, because for me it sounds obvious that playing audio clips in cells would be like efficient, but it happens that it's more efficient to play inside simplers. I mean, triggering those samples by sending MIDI notes. I don't know why, but that's how I'm making my wall of sounds now. And those are my tips, my recommendations.
Awesome. I had no idea about that, but now you mention it, it kind of bricks something in my memory that, yeah, it seems that things run much nicer in simpler. And I also have no idea why that might be. I guess that's one we're going to have to kind of ask the gods from above at, but that's a great tip because
maybe that's why it's called simpler.
yeah.
that's the secret. We found it.
It's got the secret sauce. Finally, we've worked it out. A final thing I'll add on before we move on to the next question, Lena, is also a bit outside your computer, but it's I think worth saying. A lot of the time, people I work with or see have got lots of stuff on their master bus, right? Like multiband compressors or a limiter or EQ or stuff. And this could be because you want to play it safe, or you want a kind of thick mastered-ish sound, or you want to control the EQ balance or whatever. And conversely, often laptop musicians, when we turn up to play a concert and there's a sound technician, they can kind of check out a bit. They maybe feel like we're doing their job, or they don't really know what their role is. And we also kind of ignore them, right? We just ask for a line in and, turn it up, and that's it. I really advise you, Lena, to work with these people, like explain to them what you want your set to sound like. Like they know their room and they know their equipment. So if you want a compressed sound or backing track or vocal or whatever, ask them to do that and ask them to kind of slam things into the red or add a bit of saturation or kind of explain what you want them to do with your feeds. And you'll see their eyes just light up and think, oh, awesome, I'm at work again. I've got a job and I know kind of what to do. I can be creative. So these people, I'm totally guilty of just overlooking them and seeing them as a way to the mixer board. But they're there to help, and it's really cool to give them a job and something to do. So I definitely kind of, don't put stuff on your master bus if you can avoid it, if you feel like it, and instead think about the venue and what they could do to help you sound like huge and loud and awesome. So yeah, I hope that helps, Lena. And
Yeah,
do
that's a
let us
great
know.
recommendation. Yeah, because they know the space because they work there.
Yeah, like all day, every day, right? They
Yeah.
they plug in punk bands and techno bands and everything, and they know how their system works, and we just think an EQ on the master channel is better than them, and it's totally not.
Yes.
But yeah, let us know how it
Right.
goes with your playing, and we've got another question, haven't we, Joaquin?
Yeah, we got a question from Sven from Sweden, and he's asking, what is parallel processing and how can I achieve it in Ableton Live? Okay, for that, I need to share my screen, and I'll do that right now. And I have a okay, so I have this drum loop, and I would like to produce some parallel processing here. First, what is parallel processing? Usually, maybe you got this idea from older DAWs where you can add more tracks, send copies of the signal to those tracks, and process the signal in different ways, like equalizing, compressing, and then adding those new signals to the original signal to create a thicker sound. We can do this in Ableton Live with only one channel. If that's the case, making a thicker signal, I would suggest to use a audio effect rack where we can duplicate or triplicate or whatever number of processes you want to create. For example, this is the original sound. The audio effect rack is doing nothing, but I have the possibility of creating channels which are called chains here. If I right-click with my mouse, I can get a menu which contains the option to create a chain. This is a channel as well. So I can create as many chains as I want. Let's have two. So suppose that on the second channel, I would like to have a compressed version of my signal. By the way, maybe you have seen that this is also a mixer as well. You have levels, you have banners, you can mute. So I'm going to mute the original. And also I'm going to name those because it's easier to remember what you're doing if you name things. So now we are only listening to the compressed signal. See, if I configure my glue compressor to start compressing, and I want to compress really hard because that's the signal I want to add. This is the compressed version of my drum, and I will reduce the volume. I will activate the original sound and add the signal of the compressed version. What I want in the end is to add a little bit of thickness to the sound, adding compressed version. So this is a basic version of parallel processing. Maybe you want to add something different, like, I don't know, have another chain, and I really love to do this. I would add an equalizer to the signal, and I will filter out high frequencies because I want to emphasize low frequencies. I want to add another compressor so I can compress low frequency signals. Maybe these ones are too low, or maybe I'm compressing too much. I will add more volume to it. Yeah, maybe you can hear it now. So this will be the contribution of this channel to the overall signal. So now I have the signals, the original, the compressed one, and the low frequency one. If I set the levels correctly, I can have a richer signal. And it's easy to hear the difference. If I turn off and on the rack, I can compare with the original and with the processed signal. Let's hear the original one. And now the parallel process version. I can even add some compression here because it's many channels that I am adding just to control the dynamics a little bit. Or just turn on the makeup button. In the end, it all depends on what you want to do. In here, I wanted to add thickness to my sound, but maybe you want to add space or distortion or a combination of all of these features. So that's one way of doing parallel processing in Ableton Live. I don't know if you have something to add, Merlyn?
No, not at all. That was such a great way to explain it. I really like this idea of kind of adding these chains just to emphasize different parts of the spectrum. That really kind of added some thump to it. And I like the idea you kind of set the devices the way you want them, and then you turned it all the way down. What was your thought in doing that?
Well, it's the same as when you're mixing a song, a multi-track recording. You start from low volumes and see or measure how they contribute to your final mix. So in the end, I was applying mixing techniques to my parallel processing audio effect rack. Yeah, that's the idea behind starting from low volume.
Cool. That's a really good workflow to get in there. That makes a lot of sense.
Also, another way to do this is maybe you would like to try groups, because you can have different channels. Maybe this could be a bit more complex, but it's still a good way to do it. You can have other channels reading the signal from your original channel. Like, for example, here, I am configuring channel 2 to get the signal from channel 1. I can even make it bring the signal with and without the effects and read it. So if I do this, let's turn off the volume. I can, in the end, group these channels with group tracks, right? So I can apply different effects on each channel, because in the end, these are going to be a group channel. That's another way to do it. Maybe if you are used to work with other DAWs, this will look more familiar to you. But I mean, it's many ways to do the same thing. Hope that answers your question, Sven. You get a fuller sound with this. So back to you, Merlyn.
Awesome. I love this idea of having the second track that you had and feeding in the pre-effects routing that you did. haven't thought of that before, but I love the way it kind of simplifies what you're looking at, right? You have the audio as one clip, and then you have like channels that are empty of clips, but you have effects on. So it's probably a lot easier to mix in the different ideas that you have and not just get overwhelmed by clips everywhere.
Yeah, and it can be as complex as you want, and you can also save it as a template for you. So if this is your workflow, you can save it and have it ready for any project.
Awesome. So you can put it into the new-ish template section and just have it there to throw into a project. And
maybe we should talk about that next time.
Yeah, that's got to go on the list for sure.
Yeah.
But cool. Let's. I'm going to share my screen and let's go on to the next, because I have a spicy question that I'm very happy to have received from Johnny in Odense, and that's just over the Lillebelt Bridge from where I am now. So hey, Johnny, thanks for sending it in. And this is great. Johnny asked, how do I do sound on sound sound design or recordings in live? So I guess what he's talking about is techniques like Robert Fripp's Frippatronics, or maybe some kind of tape decay stuff like William Basinski's infinity loops, or no, disintegration loops. And it's a bit tricky, and it's an old technique and a cool technique. So the idea is when you in the good old days when we had tape machines, we would put music into them, recording music or sound, and then we'd take a Y cable and take the output and feed it back into the input. So it would start layering and layering and layering, and eventually you'd get a kind of very thick, and maybe you'd start hearing the actual tape and the material you're recording to. So it has a really cool history behind it, and isn't something that's kind of instantly accessible today in DAWs. So this is a great question, and we're going to do it. I'm going to get a MIDI track, and I'm going to get an upright piano from, is it the Spitfire? Yes, fantastic pack. And this sounds lovely, and we're going to use this for our sound source. You could use anything. And I'm going to insert a return track, and I'm going to put a looper on the return track. And I'm going to set this to not follow the song tempo, and then after 4 bars I want it to overdub. So what I'm going to do is play some music into the looper, and it's going to record it, and then when it gets to the end of 4 bars it's going to start overdubbing, so writing on top of that. So next what I want to do, and this gets a bit odd, but it's so worth it, is I'm going to take an audio from the looper, from my return track, and set the monitor to in. I'm going to turn that off first, or turn it down. Got to be a bit careful with feedback loops when you do stuff like this. And I'm wearing headphones, which is a terrible idea. But we got to suffer for our art on this Ableton Doctor concept. Cool. So I've got an upright piano, and I'm going to send that to the looper. This sound that the looper makes, and I actually want the input to go to the output. Never, I just want the output sound. This looper is then going to be streamed into this track, and I'm going to also send that in. So we're creating a feedback loop here. And again, be a bit careful if you try this at home. And Johnny, maybe don't wear headphones. Maybe use like your laptop speakers to make sure you got it right. I've actually got a limiter here. I'm going to duplicate it because I'm superstitious. Awesome. So let's go. I'm gonna click on my looper, and I'm gonna just hit record. And I'm going to press overdub. Cool, so I've got this loop going round, and you can see that it's just overdubbing. I'm going to take this volume up and start feeding it into itself. So now we have this running, and it takes a little while before you notice stuff. Let's speed this up by getting echo. I'm going to set it up on an empty track, so it doesn't have any feedback or any delay, but I'm going to use the wobble and the noise. That sounds like a tape machine. And I'm going to put that after the looper. And I'll also put a limiter after that because it's getting a bit spicy. And at this point I can keep playing piano and like add to this sound. So I'll do that. So there you go, Johnny. Quite a strange idea for us modern DAW users, but good chance to show that you can create kind of feedback loops in live and do all kinds of mischief. You could do some zero input mixing, or just kind of play with this idea of feeding things back into itself. But before we sign off on that, or before I give the microphone to Joaquín, I'll just turn this up and we can listen to the effect a little bit. So yeah, you begin to hear some artifacts and tapiness and some weird overtones that is quite typical of that old school 60s, 70s technique.
Yes.
What do you think, Joaquín?
Yeah, it sounds super good. And I think this could help with live guitars. If you want this vintage sound, you can use live to process your guitar in real time. So maybe this is a good a cool patch, or not patch, but it was a patch if you were using pedals, but it's a good setup for getting this vintage sound.
And when we were discussing these questions, you had another idea without the looper, right?
Yes.
What was that about?
It was mostly about using delays. Let me show you. It's let me share my screen. But I think my idea was more into getting delays with rhythmical effects. Like, for example, let me just ungroup this. This is from the previous example, and I will leave the drums that I was using before. And for example, I love the filter delay, and I think this was one of the first delays. I remember seeing this from, I don't know if it was in version 3 when I started using live, but for me it has been there forever. So the interesting thing about this is that the feedback goes to 100. So if you send something to it like this, you can have a sound that stays there forever. Right? So I mean, here I'm filtering it. If you had some short delays, or let's make them not synchronized, just with short times, you can create this kind of sounds, which are super weird and will stay there forever. Let me explain a little bit what's going on here. The signal is split in left, right, and the center. So you can process each one separately with these delays, and you are getting some kind of distortion. You are adding harmonics as well. But it's a different kind of distortion that we're getting, different from the one you just show. But it's also by overwriting the signal. It might be a little bit different from what you just showed. Yeah. Well, it's also a way to do this feedback thing.
I love it. I love the way that this kind of a percussive drum loop quickly turns into like this tonal, textured, like sound piece, right?
Yeah, and it gets more interesting if you change the repetition time while this is happening. You know, you get these weird effects. So this is more for sound design or for getting crazy, which is what I like to do very often.
I love it. The kind of, compared to doing this with just a simple delay and getting that like nearly that self oscillation, this really, really tickles my my dub itch in that it's kind of complex and, there's different frequency spectrums happening in different times. It kind of gets overwhelming in a really good way. Wicked tip.
There is one more thing. Let me show you. If I remove the reverb that is there by default and return A, you can also create delays with, this is one of the best kept secrets in Ableton Live. Well, not anymore, so I'm going to show you. So you can like send the signal to return A, which is currently empty. And then you can send this to another channel, because, this is actually going to the master. You can send it to this channel. So what's happening here? Return is receiving the signal, but I can feed it back. Sorry. I need to set channel 2 to monitor mode, so it gets the signal from return 2. I can feed it back, which is going to create something really crazy, not good. But in here, if you press the D button on the right, you can have access to the delay of the track. So if I send the signal again to return A, I'm sending a delayed signal. And I'm getting a delay produced by the routings in the mixer. So yeah, it's just a trick that you may find useful to get different effects. Interesting effects.
Oh, that's so cool, because you add this delay to it, which goes back into the return, and then that goes back into the track 2, which adds the delay again, and that goes back into the so it's you can't do this just with a device, right? You have to kind of route it this way. I've never tried that before. That's so cool, and again, exceptionally dub. I like that a lot.
Yeah, dub. Okay, so I'm gonna continue with the next question. Nora from Norway wants to know the difference between stopping clips from here, and from here, and using the transport bar. So let's give these buttons a name. These buttons are called stop clips, and these buttons stop the clip that is playing in this channel. Also, this button. So They do the same. Let's say that if you're in a situation where you don't have an empty cell and you need to stop what is happening here, well, you can use this one. It will stop whatever is playing in this channel. And this one will stop all clips in your live set. What is the importance of having a button that stops everything? Well, it usually happens that maybe you are playing two clips like this, and you like, is it the usual? I have seen people simply pressing the space bar, so your set stops, obviously, but it's not really stopping the clips. You haven't really stopped the clips, because if you start playing again, for example, if I trigger this clip, I want to hear the bass. Sometimes it happens that, yeah, you hear the bass, but you are also playing the guitar and the drums. And the question is why I am hearing all of these clips if what I wanted to play was the bass. So let's start again. I will use the stop all clips button. You will see that we go back to the original state and I trigger one clip. If I press spacebar, you can see that the clip is still prepared to play. It's like you pause the whole session view, but you didn't stop the clip. That's why you need to stop the clips individually. That makes them stop. If I press spacebar again, nothing will play because the clips are stopped. Right? It's different. It's not the same pressing spacebar than stopping the clips. And sometimes you will have so many channels that going through all stop buttons will be such a hassle. So you may better press the stop all clips button, and that will stop everything. So this is to avoid confusion. And this is super important to understand session view, because in session view, you don't have a timeline. You are not playing from beginning to end, because you are creating the arrangement while you are performing. By the way, pressing spacebar is the same as stopping and playing the transport bar. And I'm going to show you this in arrangement view. When you have arrangement view, when you press play, you make this line start running. It's going to place your arrangement if you have some clips there. And if you press spacebar or press stop, you can see that the line stops there, but it doesn't go back to the beginning. There are two ways to go back to the beginning. One is pressing stop again or twice, right? And that is equivalent of pressing stop all clips here, right? So it depends on what you want to do. Would you like to just pause and play from the beginning again or continue playing? By the way, I have shown you that if you press stop twice, you will go back to the beginning, and when you press play, you will play from the beginning. But if you stop and you want to continue playing from there, you could press shift spacebar and you will continue playing from the position where you stopped. I hope this is not too complex, but it's super important to understand, mostly because this timeline is the difference between arrangement view and session view. What do you think, Merlyn? Hope it's not too complicated.
No, right on the money, right on the money, and really important definitions. I think it's really cool that we got this question because, it's so easy to overlook them, and I'd completely forgotten about what you just said with shift and play in an arrangement view. That's a great shortcut to remember. When we were having a chat about this before we started recording, you mentioned something about like in a band situation and this space bar. What was that you were saying?
Yeah, that it's too easy to to press the space bar and stop the whole thing. Maybe I don't think it is if it's safe to have this space bar thing, but I think it's there because at some point we need to stop, or because that's how other programs do it. I don't know, but usually in my courses I tell them that it's almost forbidden to use the um, space bar, because when you are in a band, nobody presses the space bar on you. You just don't stop playing. You at least finish the note or finish the phrase or finish whatever you're doing. It's not natural to just stop like this. And I think it's a good analogy with what Ableton Live does. If you, for example, the quantization here doesn't allow you to stop the clip in the middle of a bar. It finishes the bar first, and that is more natural musically. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a really good point you make about it can be a bit dangerous when you're out of the studio to have this muscle memory where you just press stop when you don't want to make sounds anymore. And yeah, it would be good to kind of train yourself to use the mouse to click on the stop bar rather than spamming that space bar, because
Yes.
it can be a bit we're talking about what, if you're DJing with live and you just instinctively press stop. Now, if you're in session view, you're going right back to the beginning of whatever track it is you're playing, and unless you were hoping to do a kind of digital rewind, it kind of can really screw up the flow, and it's hard to get back in. So it's really good advice. But cool and great question, Nora. That's a really nice specific thing that is very easy to get confused.
Yeah. Yeah. So nice questions this time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think that's all we got time for in this session. But we got to shout out Lena B, Sven, Johnny, and Nora for getting involved with the community and giving us us two nerds here something very juicy to have a conversation about. And so we hope that you've got a lot out of this and that you're going to join the next episode. There will be two other trainers from the Nordic region, whether it's Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and me and Joaquin will no doubt be back for other episodes. But do keep these suggestions coming and comment on this video or interact with us on the user group Facebook sites. And everything is very welcome. We'd love to be able to have some more interesting things to jump into and hopefully share our knowledge. So from me, I'll say good night, and we'll see you next time.
yeah, from me as well. And thank you for this session. Thank you for your questions. And yes, send more questions in the comments. I guess that's the best way to have them included in the next edition of Ableton Doctor. And I guess I'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone.